Hello, and welcome to Marvel Mentorship Mondays. My name is Vumile Msweli, and I am a career coach, and I have the privilege of taking you through this journey today. And today is all about interview skills that help you land that job. So, as a career coach, this is probably one of the conversations that drive a lot of people to come talk to me. Interviewing, Vumi, what do I start? This is overwhelming. It's in a digital age. It's changed. What do I need to know? So if you haven't already, grab a paper and a pen to make sure that you are taking notes. So hopefully that this lesson is going to be useful to you. So remember, by the time you get to the interview process, there are a number of checks that have already been done by the organization. The first thing is they've gone through your CV. They've taken a look at their job description, which I like to think of as their dream list, right? Their ideal candidate. That if they could create the perfect candidate, this is the person they're looking for. Then they're saying, okay, this is our short list of people that we believe can be able to, meet at least a minimum of 80%. So from a technical competency perspective, 8 out of 10 times, you're already technically competent for them to even consider you, meaning that they're willing to take a look at your existing skills to say this potentially could be the right match. So some of us make the mistake of going into the interview, trying very hard to show our technical competence. That for you, you must know already by virtue of the fact that you've made it to the first interview indicates that you are probably technically competent, or wherever the gaps may exist, they're willing to invest the time and the energy to support you in that journey. Okay, so interview skills, right? There are various types of interview. You have panel interviews, which I know for most people is the most intimidating. It's where you've got a group of people shot firing questions at you. You also usually have 2-on-1. We've got two people sitting and asking you a few questions. And then, of course, you've got 1-on-1, where it's one person. So your strategy for all of these is a little bit different. So let's start with the basics of the interview. The interview process for you as the candidate begins long before you're sitting across your potential employer. What do I mean? Research is what I am talking about. A number of us really do poor research in trying to understand where the organization is and why they're interviewing you. We just worry about, are they going to give me the job? Am I going to get paid on time? That's all we worry about. We don't worry about what is happening in this particular industry. What is happening within this particular organization? They're looking for someone to solve a problem. What is that problem? How can I bring my unique set of skills to this particular problem in order to address it in my own unique way that will add value to this organization? So you need to be able to research to answer all of those questions. What's happening in the industry? What are the trends? What are some of the challenges that they're facing? Because remember, once you've gotten the job, you still have to work in that industry for several years. And if you aren't aware as to what's happening, you, in the long term in your career, are going to be a little bit shocked and ill-prepared. What's happening within the organization? What's the culture like? Does it suit your personality? Does what the organization stand for, their mission, resonate with you? Or are you going to find yourself in a culture fit that doesn't quite work, and within 3 months you're frustrated? So it's very important you do your research beforehand. I also always encourage my candidates to also do a little bit of research as to who it is that they're meeting. Who are you meeting? What are they like? Are you prepared for some of the questions that they have? So you are, of course, going to arrive at the interview. Remember, it can either be face-to-face nowadays, or it can be digital, and the preparation is a little bit different. There is something is arriving a little too early. So some people arriving an hour or so early can often reek a little bit of, I'm so desperate for this job, I can't wait. So my advice is always, 15 to 30 minutes is more than enough. 15 minutes is perfect. It allows you to settle in, get a cup of water, and relax yourself. And more than that, unless the traffic is a little bit unpredictable. And I know everyone who is in countries where cities where traffic can be quite bad, Lagos can be quite hectic, Nairobi can be quite hectic. You want to make sure you have at least 30 minutes, hence that 15 to 30 minute gap, to make sure you arrive, you're able to settle yourself, calm yourself down, and acclimatize. Why do I also say 15 to 30 minutes early if it's a physical interview? It allows you to take a look at what's happening in the organization. I often, when if they offer me a cup of tea or water, I do take it, and if possible, say, can I? Do you mind if I sit in the canteen or somewhere comfortable? It allows you to observe. This is what you're not going to get on Google regarding the culture. It's how are people talking to their colleagues? How are people engaging clients? So you can start hearing some of the buzzwords used. You can start seeing, oh, this is the actual culture through observation. Often when I've done this going to interviews, I'm able to sit across the table from an executive and say, I noticed this about your company. And they'll say, actually, that's true. How did you know that? And that's through observation. So that's why you want to give yourself some time to calm your nerves and really observe your environment. But of course, we are faced with COVID-19. So you might not have that privilege of being in a face-to-face interview. It might be an online interview. And of course, that's a slightly different preparation. With online interviews, you're wanting to make sure you have a great internet connection. I know you're going to say, for me, internet can be a little bit unreliable. So a little trick I like to use is if my Wi-Fi at home is problematic, I make sure I've got an extra phone. So have an extra cell phone that you can use, hopefully on another network. Even if you're borrowing a family member's SIM card, get some data on it and just have it as a backup just in case. Just in case in South Africa, we have load shedding. All of a sudden, the connectivity is gone. You can jump onto potentially another network to be able to continue the interview seamlessly. So it's very, very important that you check your connectivity prior. Okay, the second thing you're also wanting to do, if you're going to be having an online interview, is of course do your research. Make sure that you've got a space where when you're speaking, it's a little bit quiet. I know we can hear children laughing, we can hear other people. So if you put yourself in a space where it's a little bit quiet and the quality of sound looks great, then you are okay to go. How are you going to know this? Do a test run on your actual laptop or on your phone. So do a little recording to the snippet to see if you can hear yourself clearly, if you can see yourself clearly, and if you're happy with the framing of your actual screen. So that makes a huge difference in how you actually approach online. Another big thing is we often go to interviews not having really studied the job description. The job description. That is their ideal candidate, what their dream list is that this person is going to do. This is important. Why is it important? Is in your actual answers to the interview, you can slot in some of the things that they require or that they're looking for. What do I mean? So let's say ideal candidate is a team player. So you mentioned with a great story that, I'm a team player. I enjoy engaging others in a manner which is not just formal. I usually, with previous colleagues, build relationships that have lasted me a lifetime. I enjoy engaging people in order to get to a common objective. That is you answering the question as to, are you the right cultural fit? And that's usually what the first interview is all about. Are you the right cultural fit for my organization? The reason we have so many types of interviews, from the psychometrics to the final interview with who you'll be working with, is to make sure you're the right fit. And one of the key components of that is culture. A great one of my former CEOs once said to me, Vumi, we hire for character and culture. Skills we can teach. Often, and I've done this too, where I interview someone, they don't quite meet the criteria, but the rapport that they're able to bring, the energy that they're able to bring, and how well they studied my business impressed me so much that I ended up hiring them. So that person shows that they invested in the vision and what it is that we're trying to achieve, not just in selling themselves. So in the interview, I want you to think about it as a first date. You're wanting to know more about the organization and what's required than just me. No one wants to go meet someone who only talks about themselves. So if you're like, I'm so fabulous, I did this, I did that, I'm great at this, then you're not really answering the question. You are at the interview to add value to solve a problem. Make it about that and how well you can do that, not just about yourself. So important that we are clear in how it is that we are engaging within an interview. Another interview tip that often gets a lot of people a little bit nervous is, Vumi, I'm not good at public speaking. When they speak to me, I'm like, not great. So one of the things I'd like you to do is practice, practice, practice. There's a fantastic university, and some of you might be at the university right now listening to me. It is the University of YouTube. There are often questions that are commonly asked in interviews. We know the usual. Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths and your weaknesses? Do you have any questions for us? All of these are common questions that you can practice, practice, practice before even seeing your potential interviewer. So you go onto YouTube and you say, what are some of the best answers that resonate and are true to you? But I want to warn against something. Specifically in an age where people are really driven to connect, connection is key. Connecting is so, so important. And what makes connection key is our ability to be authentic. Are you authentic? Can you, in essence, really connect to the person sitting across from you? So do not, despite the temptation of, I'm so desperate for this job, I'll do anything to get this job, do not lie. Be your authentic self. Because, it's like, I like joking and saying it's on dates, we usually bring our marketing department, right? In the relationship, we bring our operations. Where you're like, actually, this is who I really am. You just make marketing. Yes, market yourself, but you need to be authentic. And what's becoming, and a lot of us, even with things, and I see this a lot of common mistakes people make is even in answering the question, tell me about your weaknesses, we say things that aren't weaknesses. We're like, I'm a perfectionist. Meanwhile, you know very well you don't even make your bed to the last corner as if it was a hotel bed. You aren't really a perfectionist, but you think that that's what they want to hear. Be authentic, but also be realistic with regards to your weaknesses. Say, if you are the kind of person who says, I really like working alone, or I really am task orientated, and I find that I battle sometimes with timekeeping. You need to be authentic. Our ability to be authentic is what's going to resonate with our actual interviewer long after, because you're going to have to work with these people and the relationship will sour if you lied. There is no point in creating a relationship based on lies. So please be authentic. Okay, so we've spoken about don't be too late, don't be too early. Also, the same rule applies if you're doing an online interview, 10 to 15 minutes before, make sure you are online. We've spoken about the importance of research, understanding the organization, understanding the industry, and making sure that the value that you're able to bring answers them. The third thing we spoke about is the importance of going through the job description. Go through the job description thoroughly in order to make sure that you're able to answer where your gaps currently lie, where you might need a little bit of support, which is great because where there are gaps means there are areas of growth, which also actually gives comfort to your interviewer to say this person is not going to just be in and out. They actually have room to grow within the industry. We've also answered the question regarding research. How do you go about researching and truly comprehending the value that we can bring? And then, of course, practicing commonly asked interview questions. As part of your research, I also would like you to take a look at the people who are on LinkedIn. And this is a little tip I'm going to give you. Research people who are currently in the organization. What's their personality type like? What's important to them? Are they your tribe, so to speak? Usually the people in an organization are a good indicator to us as to the culture and what the organization values. Okay, so if everyone in the organization is a go-getter, fast-powered, fast-speaking, you already know what the culture is going to look like. But if there's like, okay, this person I think comes from this particular background and we'll be working in the same department, I think we potentially could get along quite well. So that's something to also think about. And if you've got a friend or common connection, don't be afraid to just send them a quick DM. Ask them, what's been your experience working in this organization? What are some tips? Really getting the inside info, so to speak, so you can better position yourself when having the conversation in that interview. I mentioned a little bit earlier that, there are different types of interviews. So in the one-to-one interview, it's a lot easier, even though it seems intimidating, because there's only one person that you're trying to really connect with. So it's important that you thoroughly research so you can connect with them a little bit easier. The reason in a panel interview, we feel like we've been ganged up on. So you need to get comfortable looking at the person who asked the question. Of course, eye contact is very, very important. But also what's important is you need to make sure that in a panel discussion, you are listening, because different people are in a panel because they're looking for different characteristics. Otherwise, they would have just had one person. So it's important that you're able to walk away from a panel interview having focused on each and every member of that panel, looking at them, engaging them, and answering what is important to them and for them. So your preparation work in researching the people before, okay, we'll have the head of marketing there, we'll have the head of operations there, and we'll have the HR administrator there. They all find various things important. So it's important that you know what's important to them so you can showcase the value you can bring from their frame of reference and their context. So that's a little tip I'd like to leave you with. Okay, so here we are at the interview. We are looking good. We checked our lighting. It's online. We've researched the people. We've researched our organization. How do we then go about ensuring that we are truly, truly connecting? Eye contact, authenticity, and bringing that understanding. So when you feel like, I don't know what they just said, make sure you understand the question. Do not feel the pressure to just speak because you're nervous. So if they ask you a question, you're like, oh my word, I cannot for the life of me remember what it is that they're talking about. Be patient with yourself and say, oh my goodness, that's a very good question, Zintle. I appreciate it, but I don't think I quite understand. If I understand what you're asking me is, and then reframe it in a manner that makes sense to you and resonates with you. So don't be afraid to ask the question back to make sure you understand. You'd rather have the question repeated and you answer it correctly than you assume to know and then go ahead and answer incorrectly. So that's one thing you need to take a look at. Another thing you need to take a look at is an interview is a conversation. It is two different entities having a conversation about the value that they can bring to each other. They will bring monetary value in exchange for your intellectual property and time. So you need to also be comfortable to ask them that question. What will the job entail? What does a day-to-day look like? What are some of the challenges that I may face? What are the colleagues that I will work with? What are they like? What is your ideal candidate? Ask those questions. What's your staff turnover like? Research enough that you actually have questions to ask. It usually is a red flag if they say, do you have any questions? And you say, no, thanks, I'm good. It means you pretty much can do the job tomorrow, which is very rarely the case. So make sure you show your own interest in your own research by asking them pertinent questions. One of my favorite questions is one that indicates your knowledge of the industry. I have noticed, and I remember in telco, like a good question for me was, I've noticed that it's been a massive surge and shift by your consumers from calls to data. How do you go about making sure that that revenue line is being replaced because data is a little bit more affordable? That is a question that is keeping someone up at night within that organization. And if I'm there to help support and close that gap, I need to understand the organization's point of view. So I can say, okay, that makes sense because what I've done is A, B, C, D, and I think that's something I can help support. So in asking the question, it gives you greater understanding, but it also helps you to better position yourself in that particular organization. One thing you also want you to know, and a lot of people forget this, is awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank people for their time. They didn't have to choose you. They didn't have to be there. Then also thanking them via email after the interview. It's a nice way to keep you top of mind. Thank you so much for your time. I thoroughly look forward to hearing from you. It's a small personal touch that a lot of us forget. We just assume they'll call us when they call us. And with you're successful or unsuccessful, I always like getting feedback. Feedback is a gift. I'll repeat that. Feedback is a gift. So if you're able to get feedback where you say, thank you so much, I'd really appreciate feedback. What are areas of improvement for me? You know, there've been people we've interviewed where they were not successful, but because they were so interested in their own growth, we're like, this person will fit into our culture. We kept them on ice and later we were able to engage them. So remember, this conversation might be for a particular role and you're better suited for another role. But feedback will allow you to stay top of mind because most people don't think about it. Another big thing, and it's specifically for my young mentees on the Mentorship Boardroom, your dress code. Your dress code is so, so important. What are you going to wear? So stay away, please, from casual wear. Seems obvious, but it's not so obvious. You'd rather be overdressed than underdressed. You would rather be overdressed than underdressed. When you're doing your research, take a look at the people. What are they wearing? What is the style? That will, in essence, reflect to you what you should be wearing and how you should be showing up to that interview. Do not take advantage of the fact that we're at home and you're comfortable and you're all formal at the top and all party at the bottom with your pajama pants and slippers. You still have to show up as the best version of yourself. Ladies, a lot of people ask me, Vumi, but do I really have to be formal? Do I really have to wear lipstick? Is it really necessary? I always say you dress the way you would like to be addressed. You dress the way you would like to be addressed. If you're going into an interview, you're going to be asking them for $500,000, R1 million salary, and you look like actually you just need 4,000 Rand. Do you think they're going to give you that million? They won't. So make sure you dress the way you would like to be addressed. This is also when you are interviewing for a role that is next level in your career. It's always a good idea to see how people who've been doing the role previously, how they dress, and that will give you a great indication as to how you should show up. The same conversation should hopefully be happening even if you're having an internal interview. Speak to the previous person employed. What were some of the challenges? What are you going to bring to this particular role that hasn't been brought before? Understanding all of this is going to help you better market, inverted commas, market yourself and prove yourself to be the best candidate for this particular role. So those are some interview skills that I'd like you to think about. But the best interview skill is, of course, practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the better you get. Very rarely do we actually see ourselves speaking and interviewing, and very rarely are we put in a position of pressure where we've got to answer questions. And the only way to get better at that is practice. There's a reason they always say, games aren't won on the field. They won at practice. It's the hours you do prior that will help set you up to win at the actual finale of that interview. So please do practice. Use the University of YouTube. Reach out to a mentor to help you, a coach to assist you and support you, and really, really make sure that when it comes to that interview, you're not leaving money at the table. My last and final tip, and I know a lot of people say to me, Vumi, what happens when we start speaking about the money? Tell me about the money. When it comes to the money, it's why you're waking up in the morning. Of course, otherwise you would just be volunteering. So one of the things you have to always ask, and this is the art of negotiation for me, is you always want to ask one little question. Is this the best we can do? It's just a question. And looking at the offer they're making you, and remember it is an offer, is this the best we can do? That's all you have to ask. If HR says, yes, unfortunately, our budget's quite tight, then that's that. But if they say, okay, for me, maybe there's a little bit of leeway here where we can discuss potential opportunities. It's always a fantastic question to ask. And what's the worst that could happen? They're not going to rescind the offer. They'll just say, no, unfortunately it is. And probably you could get a little bit extra, which makes you which will empower you to have negotiated better for yourself. Remember, they're interviewing you because it's two entities looking to give value to each other. They know the value they will give you will be monetary. The value you will give them might not be monetary, but the value you will give them will fundamentally add value. The better you articulate that value to them, the happier they will be to give you that monetary value. So those are my interview skills and tips that can help you land that job. And hopefully the next time I see you on our Monday session, you would have gotten the job of your dreams. That's all from me, Coach Vumile. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so kindly for inviting me to the Mentorship Boardroom. To Yolanda, Tuba, and her team, really, really appreciate this. So my name is Lauretta and I am the head of HR at MTN Group. I am here to answer all of your questions. Perhaps just a quick snippet by way of introduction. I have, goodness me, I think quite a long and varied career. Started off as a management consultant at what was then Anderson Consulting Accenture, moved into investment banking, believe it or not, had a stint there, went back into consulting, went into project management, IT project management. And in the banking industry, in the financial services, I really, really strengthened my human capital skills. And this is where I am today as the head of HR in this role. So thank you, Vumi, for that really, really insightful talk. I think we can all agree that Vumi has given us some really, really serious pearls of wisdom. The HR that she talks about happens to be me. So I smiled when Vumi spoke about that, but I agree with everything she said. I think those are really, really great tips that we need to, just to try and consume and abide by. My job today is to hear what questions you have. I am going to go into the chat group to see if any questions. But while I'm getting the chat group and waiting for the administrator to help me, perhaps let me start off by maybe just saying, many of us are really, really quiet on the line. I would like this to be an interactive engagement session. One of the things I did very, very quickly as Vumi was talking and as I saw, the participant list increase, was I just quickly went and just did very quick research on some of the participants on the call. And I mean, I see we have participants from financial services, we have graduates, we have someone who I think is in the medical field, she's a nursing sister, we have a psychometrist, we have graphic designers, we have project managers. I think there was even an entrepreneur. She owns her own company. She's a wellness coach. So just the variety of people that I can see on the line, I am really, really happy and looking forward to some rich engagement. So let me see if there are any questions that you would like me to respond to. I know that Yolanda is also on the call, and perhaps you can help me field some questions, Yolanda, if that's okay. Okay, while we're waiting for Yolanda, I'm getting a message from her that she is coming through. Let me respond to this question.
Hi, I'm on. Yeah.
Oh, you're on. Lovely.
Yeah. So there are some questions on the chat, Lauretta, and I really want us to focus on the people that are on the chat and see if they've got questions that they would want responded to. I can help you out here. It says someone is asking, what is the correct response to the popular question, tell us about yourself? you've done many interviews with me at MTN. So when you guys ask that question, what are you expecting back as a response?
So I think that is a typical question that we ask when we start the interview. What is important is when you have applied for a particular role, you have understood the requirements of that job, and you have positioned your skills, your competence, your experience against that job. So what is important when someone says, tell me about yourself, is from a professional perspective, I think it is really important to talk to those elements that respond to the job requirements. The technical competencies, the behavioral competencies, the leadership competencies, speak to those. And it's also always great to leave the panel with one or two things that you think may interest them from a personal perspective. So, perhaps I am a mom, my kids are potentially grown up and already, independent, or my kids are still, of school going age, etc. But I think the key thing to do is, as you focus on that question, answer it as it relates to the experience as set out in the job profile.
So in other words, people are not asking you about telling them about where you grew up, you were born in Cape Town, you were done this. Because I've had interviews, senior interviews, where people start off there, right? Where they actually tell you that I was born here, I have 4 siblings, and that has nothing really to do with the job, or actually who you are today as it pertains to the kind of characters that we're looking for from a job. So, I mean, those particular people, what message do you have for them? I see Refilwe is lifting up her hand as well. We will come to you, Refilwe. Can the administrator just unmute her for now? So maybe, Lauretta, I mean, this is to you. I mean, what goes through your head when someone starts telling you about that they had a yellow bicycle when they were 6?
I think it's very important to know that we do read the CV. So if you've put all of that in your high school, you were a prefect, you were in the choir, all of that, if it's in the CV, please don't repeat it. The important thing is you need to make the most of the time that you have available. So picture yourself selling this product, and this particular product happens to be you. And you're on this elevator, and you need to pitch yourself to a very important person. You've got only those few minutes from when you are at the bottom of the escalator to when you're at the top of the escalator. And think of those succinct points that can sell you. And that is the kind of thing you always need to have in mind. Don't try to add too much. Leave people with key things so that they will remember you. That would be my advice, Yolanda.
When you said that, right, you've just reminded me, I'm going through my book. We did an interview at MTN for a risk person. And I remember, and I wrote it down because it was so kind of insightful. And the person, when you ask that question in particular, they actually say, there are 4 things that you need to know about me, right? That's how they framed it. There are 4 things you need to know about me. And because this was a risk role, he actually mentioned he's like, I strive for excellence, right? And in everything I do da-da-da. Secondly, I'm a person of integrity. So when I'm faced with the choice between A and B, I will go with this kind of, because these are the principles that actually drive my decision making. And he went on and he actually articulated 4. And one of the last one was the importance of family to him. And then just like framing it in a way that actually made it easy for us to consume was actually much easier to actually remember much later when we're assessing all candidates.
Exactly.
Him in particular, because he stood out by actually framing it a lot easier for the interviewer.
And that is a perfect example to what I was saying. Yeah, be succinct, know that the panel has quite a few other people, and you need to be memorable. Just keep that top of mind, be memorable.
Okay, Refilwe, I'm coming to you. Lauretta, here's Refilwe, who wants to ask a question. She's got her hand up. Refilwe, you're unmuted.
Okay. Hey, thanks. My name is Refilwe Satludi, and I do have a question for you. You mentioned that when you talk about when you're introducing yourself, the question of tell me about yourself, you must stick to the professional side and stick to the job description. While you're doing that, how do you put in being authentic? Because the previous lady, I'm sorry, I forgot the name. I think it's Viola. She mentioned that you need to be Vumile, yes, sorry about that. She mentioned that you need to be authentic when you are selling yourself to people. So when you're sticking to job description, how do you include the authenticness into that?
Thank you, Refilwe. You are in the graphic design space, I take it, right? I think if I searched it correctly. Great, okay. So the job description comprises several elements. The technical element is one of those. There are also behavioral elements. There are also leadership elements in terms of assessing competency. So when you talk to tell me about yourself, yes, you can speak about the technical experience. So remember, Yolanda spoke about this example of this risk candidate, the candidate that was applying for the risk role. And she spoke of the first thing he said, the second thing he said, and then the third thing. And then the fourth thing, he did talk about the personal, softer, behavioral, sort of non-technical and non-job related stuff. So talk about that. Talk about, about you being quite an authentic person. Talk about how that translates and why that is important. And I speak about that because if you go into most organizations, what they look for when they interview anybody, they are almost 80% sold, as Vumi has said, that you match the technical specs of the role. So don't focus on that too much. They're trying to assess the leadership, the cultural fit. So once you've given a very brief view of your skills as it relates to the role, you will be guided by the questions in the interview. And you'll see most of those questions will talk to, are you an authentic leader? What are your values? What are your principles? Because that is what organizations today hire for.
Okay, thanks for that, Lauretta. I mean, there's a question here from Vuyelwa saying, what if the salary is not disclosed? How do you bring this up?
If the salary is not disclosed, how you bring it up is if they are the panel or the HR person that is managing the interview, you need to read the room. If the opportunity presents for you to ask that question, then you can ask it there. Alternatively, you can have an offline discussion with the recruitment partner or with the HR head or anybody that you have engaged with around the interview for this role. I know sometimes it is an uncomfortable thing for people to speak about. And if you feel that you are uncomfortable to address it in that forum, then you can definitely take it offline. If you feel and you've read the room and you're comfortable with asking that question, feel free to ask, what is the salary range that this particular role offers? I don't think it is a taboo question to ask at all, but I think it's important for you to ask it at the right time.
Okay, so timing is key there and reading the room. Okay, so I mean, look, there's this thing that HR practitioners actually do where they ask people, okay, tell us what is your current package? Can you send us your current pay slip? And all those kind of stuff, which I also think I've never had to do, but I think it's so not the right thing to do. You are applying for a role for what it pays, not what I am getting paid today, wherever I'm working, right? So how do you, I mean, how do people respond to this question around, please provide us your current salary, your current salary slip?
So I think it is and I can understand, Yolanda, that, you say that you are, that people can definitely be uncomfortable about that, but nothing stops you from giving a range, give a sense of what is the salary that you expect. I think definitely you can do that. You don't have to sell yourself short. You don't have to overprice yourself. You don't have to disclose your salary, but you can definitely talk in terms of ranges if that is a ask of.
So if someone asks me, because a lot of the people on the call, other people ask them, okay, can we have your salary slip, please? We're thinking of making you a job offer. Can we have your current salary slip? Is there a legal basis for people to even ask this question, to ask us to provide that our current salary slips?
I think it is a personal thing, and if you as the candidate, if you are not comfortable to do that, there is no absolute requirement for you to do that, is the short answer.
Okay. Perfect. That's good to know. And then here's a question here. I'm going to actually bastardize this name. I'm so sorry. Alayeska or something like that. I hope I did some justice. Oh, the hand is up. Thank you for saving me. Okay. Can the administrator? Okay, you're unmuted. Thank you so much. You can ask your question. It's Ali. I'm calling you Ali for simplicity right now.
That's perfect. I asked majority of the people to call me that.
There you go.
Thanks for giving me this opportunity to just chat with you. In addition to the question I just put on the chat, I guess I can repeat that question as well if you would like that. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Great. So my first question is basically I work for a small consulting firm right now. I want to transition to a big consulting firm or a big firm like MTN, for instance. Let's give an example of MTN. How would you say I could position myself to do that? Is it that you require additional skills, or when you're interviewing someone who comes from a small firm, what do you look at that you can say that this person would move to that space? That's my first question. My second question, would you like me to wait for you to answer that and then repeat the second question?
No, you can proceed, it's fine.
Great. The second question is about using humor during interviews. So of course, so for example, I'm someone who jokes around a lot when I'm nervous. So I would generally just think about a lot of jokes, and I would want to make a joke during an interview. How is that considered? Is that something, is it taboo, or what is the limit to that, what would I do if, for example, I need to stop myself from joking around? What would be some of the tips that you would give to someone like myself? Yeah, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So I think maybe just in terms of answering your first question, which was around, what is the best way to move from a small firm to a larger firm? And I just want to see what specifically you said your question here. You said, what is the best way to move from a small firm to a larger firm? For some background, I have research. Oh, you've got a research background. Okay. So what the important thing is the depth of your experience, Ali. I think it is important when you move from a smaller firm to a larger firm. For me, the size of where you come from doesn't necessarily matter. I think it is the knowledge, the experience, the depth that you have in terms of fulfilling that role. Remember, people hire for talent. Organizations hire for talent. organizations will look at your strategic thinking ability. So what is your analytical ability? They will look at the some of the finer competencies, like, you know, your relationship building. Are you an executor? Are you an influencer? So there are specific competencies that organizations look for in terms of the experience that you have. And if you are from a smaller organization, it potentially could be in your favor, because you would potentially have had a much broader scope, and you would potentially have been involved in many activities, projects, programs, etc., that someone potentially in a larger firm may not have been involved in. And I think when Vumi was talking, I saw that you are a project manager currently. And for me, am I correct, Ali?
He's off mute. He's on mute. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And assuming
yes,
you are.
He's saying yes, you are.
He is. Okay, great. And within the sphere of project management, and where the practice is moving to agile and the new ways of work, methodologies, etc., if you have those experience and you have run either release trains or projects end-to-end completion, the depth of your skill is what is important. Your ability to constantly learn, to constantly grow, to constantly remain curious is what is important. Your information and your research that you have on that organization that you want to move to, and the value that you believe you are going to be adding to that company that you are targeting, that is what is important, not where you come from. So those would be my tips around that. And then if I can potentially maybe move to the second item that you asked, which was around using humor during an interview. Now, I know sometimes humor is used potentially to calm the nerves or to break the ice, etc. I think for me, the advice would be, and I've seen it many, many times, my advice to you would be, don't overdo it. Don't overdo anything. Keep it very calm, keep it natural. An interview is a conversation. When people get nervous in any interviews that I facilitate, I start off by saying, let's just start, just breathe. Just breathe. Couple of heavy breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Couple of those, calm the nerves, and off we go. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. You don't want to come across as being too lighthearted and too playful. That would be my advice to you.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, I guess it also is important to actually understand the people in the room, right? If you're going to be interviewing people who are, I guess, square like me, right? You are not going to use a lot of humor. It doesn't work, right? And you don't know me well enough to know what I really, really find funny and what I don't. And most importantly, you only have about 45 minutes to an hour with these people to actually convince them of a lifetime kind of opportunity, that you deserve the opportunity that is being presented. And you know, it's up to you how you spend that hour, but I must be honest, I wouldn't, humor is a hit or a miss. You know, you might actually score big, or you might actually fall flat on your face, and where no one actually takes you seriously. So depending also on the nature of the role, obviously, it is important. If you are going for a Nando's environment, right? Most probably it works there. But I know, I mean, yeah, if you're interviewing in a more serious role, it's very difficult. But we are back to the chat. Lauretta, we've got, guys, please lift up your hand and ask the questions directly to Lauretta. We've got Lauretta here. She's Group HR at MTN, and she has lots of experience. I defer her for pretty much everything, actually HR within MTN. So this is someone I trust for advice. This is someone I also trust to actually guide you through the hiring process. So she knows what we look for in interviews. She guides the organization on what to look for. So please lift your hands and actually ask your question, Edwell. Here's a question here. What do you expect from an interview when you are currently doing the job as a contractor and now there's a position that has opened up as a permanent? This happens to a lot of people where they start off as contractors and then the permanent position becomes available. How do people actually answer these questions? What do they need to do?
This is a reality, and I think it is going to be the future of how companies recruit going forward. So it's really, really important that we need to, address this. But to answer the question more directly, as a contractor, if the vacancy becomes available that you are currently filling, important not to take for granted that you will automatically be placed in that role. Important to take the opportunity and the honor of that, of being invited to that interview, to take it and to show up. And I think sometimes in my experience with people I've seen is that it is almost a right, it is almost an expectation that because I have been doing this role, I will be placed in the role. And I think people falter a lot there. Do your homework, do your research. There will be other candidates that are being interviewed. For as long as you're not permanently employed in that role, the organization will be in a position to invite other people to interview for that role. And if you don't show up and you don't respond accordingly to the questions asked in that interview, nothing forces the organization from hiring you, assuming that your contract would have come to its natural end. So the key takeout there is don't take it for granted. Show up and prepare for that particular interview.
Okay, thanks, Lauretta. Cognizant, we only have about 7 minutes left. So here's another question from Sasa. Will it be appropriate to ask about management style of the organization, whether it's top down or bottom up in terms of their approach? Is it appropriate to ask this question?
I think it is very appropriate. And I think it's also important because it will tell the candidate about the kind of culture that the organization has and the kind of culture the organization drives, and if that is a cultural fit for you. And remember, the interview is a two-way process where just as the organization is assessing you in terms of fit, etc., vice versa. So ask that question. Ask whatever question you feel will help you also make the decision to join or to decline.
Cool. Here's a question from Landiwe. If you apply for a job that requires someone to lead a team and you are technically strong, but have not led a team recently or in your past 3 jobs, but in your previous job you have, how best do you answer the question about the lack of experience in leadership? Yeah, HR people on the frying pan right now, right? You ask us to have lots of experience on the job. Why do you do this to us?
So I guess the question is, if you don't have leadership experience at this in your current role,
time, yes,
at this time. So when we interview candidates, we look at the sum of the candidate's experience. It's not just about one particular point in time. And I think it is important for the candidate in this particular instance to talk about the experience when they led the team, what did they learn, how did they engage, how that particular experience becomes useful for this role that they're currently interviewing. Many people are very agile in terms of their careers, and they do different things. And it's important to pick out and highlight those experiences in your career in support of the role that you're currently interviewing. So the important thing is, don't downplay any experience that you do have. Highlight it, link it to the requirements of the job. You may not be doing it at the moment, but you have the experience. And if you don't have it, and if you're learning, say that. If you have a mentor that will potentially, guide you in terms of that, say that. Just be honest.
Yeah, thanks. That's super kind of useful, right? Because we are all leaders somewhere, right? You are leaders in a family context, you are a leader in a church group, you are a leader in a project that you are actually driving. That actually shows us the leadership skills you have beyond just the work, classical, only work environment. So if you have other broad leadership kind of qualities, then you can share it as part of this. Here's a great question to actually end on.
Yeah.
Where's this now? Okay, there. From someone on YouTube. I hope it's Chovelo. If I butchered that, I apologize. Someone who actually sent us that question that says, when shortlisting candidates, what are some of the key things that you specifically look out for that makes a candidate stand out? You said we must be memorable. How do we become memorable?
So in terms of shortlisting candidates, so at MTN in particular, we use a video interview tool. And when you participate in that video interview, we use that as a shortlisting vehicle. And we pick up quite a lot. So the CV, like I said, we can read. You would have, in preparing for this role, when you submit your CV, you would have ensured that there's a great match between your skills and the job. So that is a tick. We then ask you some questions on this online interview. And those are very, very important, because I mentioned earlier the cultural and the leadership and those softer sort of issues or not necessarily issues, those softer traits and qualities that we look for. Those come through, and those are what we typically use during the shortlisting, because there are many people that will potentially qualify to do a particular job, but there are not many people that would have those qualities that we need from a cultural and a leadership and a behavioral perspective. So those things are becoming more and more important as we shortlist.
Yeah, thanks so much for those pearls of wisdom and actually sharing that with us. I mean, what I'm getting out of this entire conversation is very simple, is that an interview process is a pre, during, and after process. Basically, before the interview, how you've written your CV, how you've sold yourself above everyone else, and you've made now the shortlist and you're good. Now, during the interview, you actually have to show up to the best version of yourself. That elevator speech or escalator speech is super important. The ability to describe yourself, also link experience to what is required in the job description is super, super important, because sometimes we talk a lot about what we've done, but we don't land it back in terms of what is in the job description, what people are asking for. And basically, and if you don't know, if you didn't hear a question, ask again. If you don't ask again, do what politicians do, reframe the question. Politicians don't answer any questions that they don't want to answer. They just reframe the question. They say, from my perspective, or they take any question. It doesn't matter what it is. So it's important that we do that during the interview, but at all times, remember, how do we frame stuff? Remember, I talked about the 4 points. For example, someone actually shared with us, and they framed their response around that, making it easier for the interviewer to actually consume the information. And then after the interview, importantly, saying thank you. Like if there are 20 people that I get to interview in the course of a year, okay, guys, I don't interview a lot of people in a year, but if I interview 20 people in the year, actually, I must probably say only one or two actually sends me a thank you email. And I remember those two, right? I remember those, even the unsuccessful one. Remember, your last role, your last interview is a building block for your next interview, or the next role that you might get in that company. So this is part of making yourself, I guess, memorable as well. So do what the others are not willing to do. And if you are bold enough, you can even ask for feedback. I mean, none of those guys actually asked me for feedback except internal candidates. But I think it is super, super important to actually always circle back and just make sure that you've got that last element, that last kind of thing that where you're able to say, actually, let me close this process out. Okay, Lauretta, those are some of the things that I picked from both you and Vumi's kind of talk today. Is there anything that you want to say to everyone that's listening to say, how do I land that job? It's really, really difficult. Let us know, what is that one thing or two things that we must think about?
I think it is belief. Thank you, Yolanda. I think it is belief in yourself. I have attended, I don't know how many thousands of interviews. And I think that those people who are confident, who are authentic, who have come prepared to the interview, score far better than anybody who is technically strong. And that for me is, I think, what I want to leave this particular audience with. Be your authentic self, prepare, research, and believe in yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauretta. We really appreciate you taking time out to share. We've got almost 100 people between the two platforms. So thank you so much, because I know you would have changed at least 100 people's way of thinking about interviews this evening. So thank you so much for making the time. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Please remember to sign up at the Mentorship Boardroom, everyone, and be a mentor or a mentee. By the way, you can use your mentee to help you with interview skills as well. So sign up.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.